they know, and they can send someone to help you. But continue.
Exactly. And spoiler alert, I have one as well now.
Beautiful.
So, we used the tiny bit of signal that Dave had, and I called Chrissy, and Chrissy's my wife. She's awesome. We've been together since right before I turned 14, and I'm going to be 40 this year. So
Amazing.
We've been together for a very, very long time.
I've been with my wife since I was 16 years old, so I can relate to that strongly.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So I called her, and I gave her the heads up saying, hey, this is taking longer than we anticipated. I did some quick calculations saying, okay, well, from Times Square, if we go down Panther Brook, it's going to be about 5.5 miles. If we go back up Santanoni a bit and then down the express, it's going to be about 6 miles. So we decided to continue with the original plan of going down Panther Brook. And if I was smart, I would have realized that the 1 mile an hour average was not going to be accurate. It hadn't been accurate for the last 6 hours. Why would it be accurate for the next 6? And I didn't really consider it at that point. So all I told my wife was, hey, we're running late. Probably not going to get to the car until about 2:30 or so in the morning. Don't worry, no problem. I'll be home before you wake up in the morning. Famous last words, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that made her feel so good to hear you say that. And I'm being sarcastic when I say that.
Yeah. She was kind of like, okay, is everything all right? And I explained it. So, yeah, no problem. It's just a little tougher trek than anticipated. And it's really what I was chalking it up to. We were perfectly fine. We were still, cognizant. We were still able to move, and nobody was hurt. We had food. We were good. No problem. So we did what we could. We let Chrissy know that, okay, cool, no problem. We'll be home much later than anticipated. Don't worry. Get some sleep. So from that point, we grabbed our headlamps because the sun was going down. Last light was coming upon us because it was July. So, about 8:30 at night, we could still see a little bit, but we knew that was waning quickly. Got our headlamps on. We started towards Herald Square, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump from Times Square pretty much. Got to Herald Square and saw there's a rock there that has a P with an arrow scratched into it and a TS and an arrow scratched into it, pointing in a different direction. So the P obviously stands for Panther. Looking at the map and the capital T, the plan, capital T, capital P, Panther was only 0.2 of a mile away. And again, I'll chalk it up to summit fever. One of those situations where you're like, well, it's right there. It's going to take me 20 minutes to go there and get it, and then I don't have to come back out into this hateful place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we did. We ended up going up Panther, even though we were running significantly behind time. Hindsight, again, poor decision.
And it's the dark. You're in the dark now, right? You're all headlamps at this point.
Just about.
Okay.
It's really close to that last light of the day. It was about 8:30.
Okay, sure. And in the summer, yeah, it's still a little light out at that point.
Right. So we reached the top. We reached the top of Panther, and wouldn't you know it, it starts raining on us.
Classic.
Like, oh no. Yeah, it's great. So we kind of crest up. There's a section of the little trail that leads up to the top of Panther where you kind of have to scramble up a rock. You get to the top of that, and we looked out, and it's a nice, huge summit. And it looked like helicopters had dropped the big construction bags of rocks on the summit recently. And usually those are used to outline alpine vegetation area, which is cool because it kind of gives you a visual reminder, hey, don't step here. This is very fragile vegetation that is unique to not only it's unique to the Adirondacks across the globe. It's very important to kind of stay off that stuff. So I saw that and was like, oh, that is really awesome. I'm feeling pretty positive because this is an unmarked peak, right? This is an unmanaged trail, and it was still getting the love that it needs to make sure that these fragile alpine vegetation zones still can grow and thrive, which is awesome. So we got to the top of Panther, and oddly, there is a section of the trail right before the summit on Panther, like the summit marker, that is very, very, very muddy. At least it was when we were there in 2017. So it was one of those situations where this is worse than the bog, but it was much smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Get to the top where the stamp for the summit marker is, or the summit, survey marker. And when we went up, Panther didn't actually have a wood sign summit, which is unfortunate. But they did have that, so we took a boot shot, which is all three of us put our boots on. We got the dogs with their paws on next to the survey marker and took a picture of that. Took a moment to look around, and the rain was light. It was light misty rain. It wasn't like hard pelting rain or anything like that, which was good. But we looked over towards the west where the sun was just going down behind the Sewards, and wouldn't you know it, I saw flashes of lightning.
Perfect.
This is
just what you want to see right now. And real quick, what time was it when you got up there, and how many hours into your hike is it at that point?
It was just about 9 o'clock at that point, p.m. So we were. This was hour 15.
Whew, man.
No, hour 14. I'm sorry, hour 14, because we didn't get boots on the ground until 7.
Okay.
So
still
14 hours.
That's and you're still very far from your car.
Yeah, we have. I think it's about 5.5 miles to the car. 5.5 to 6 miles to the car. Yeah. It was not the best situation to be in. But it was the situation we were in, so we made the best of it.
Mm-hmm.
Saw that, said, okay, let's beat feet, let's get a move on here. And we made our way back down to Herald Square, which is really hop, skip, and a jump. It's very close, very quick to get back there. And we started making our way down Panther Brook. Now, the trail down Panther Brook is legitimately for maybe about half of it in the brook. The standard joke that we have when we're talking about high peaks trails is you find where the water comes down, and that's where the trail is.
Yep, totally. You just find the drainage and go up it. That's the trail.
There's no such thing as a switchback. It's just straight up the mountain through the drainage, and that's how you get to the top. This is no different, right? So Panther Brook Trail, what can I say about that? It is incredibly steep and incredibly rocky. And I don't think that any of my prior research had indicated that, nor did looking at the map kind of make me think that it was going to be very steep, but it was. So we start making our way down that, and it's slow because things are starting to get a little slick from the rain, and we're tired. All of a sudden, Mark swears. And Mark's a pretty quiet guy. He doesn't swear too terribly often, but when he does, it's pretty colorful. We ask him what's up, and turns out his headlamp battery had died. I'm like, oh, you can't even make this stuff up. He had a USB headlamp, and he had charged it up the night before. And when we put it on, there was no problem. But it had died when we were making our way down. We were right near the top of the Panther Brook, too. It wasn't even very far down. Turns out the only thing we can think of is maybe the button got clicked while it was in his bag.
Yeah, sure. That happens.
And it was on during the day. I mean, that happens on a regular basis. But maybe not a regular basis. That happens occasionally. How about that?
Sure.
Thankfully, we're prepared, and he had a power brick with the USB cable, so he plugged that in, stuffed it in his pack, and made sure it was in a place where it wouldn't click on and use the battery it was charging. And we had a handheld backup flashlight because, Dave had his headlamp on, I had my headlamp on, and we had an extra flashlight that we could give to Mark. Unfortunately, that means Mark's one hand is spent holding the flashlight instead of, making sure he can successfully, safely climb down some of the rocks that are in the path.
Sure.
So, as you would expect, pace got really, really slow, much slower than it was before, which is tiring. It's frustrating. If you're already tired and making your way back to the car, and you already should have been done at this point, to have another situation like this pop
right.
up.
And you're already on hour, 15 or so at this point into the day, with many hours still to come. Yeah, oh man, that was quite the situation you were in. But continue.
So, we're taking our time, making sure nobody gets hurt on the way down, because that'll make things worse. Yes, things may suck right now, and it might be a tough situation, but we're all still healthy. We're all able to walk out on our own, and we're going to maintain that as long as we possibly can. Unfortunately, at this point, the dogs were getting very, very tired as well.
Definitely.
Why wouldn't they, right?
Yeah, right.
They've been on the trail as long as we have.
And when a dog hikes a mountain, they hike a mountain 3 times, whereas we hike it once. They hike it 3 times, from running up and then running back, and then running up and then running back, the whole way up the mountain. So they're probably shot at this point.
Yeah, they're exhausted, and these dogs are very good dogs. I love all 3 of them. They're fantastic. But when they get tired, they start getting underfoot, and they want to, rub up against you and kind of encourage you to stop so they can sleep. So, it was very tough on that particular part of the trail for them to get underfoot, because it could cause tripping and, like I said, it was an interesting situation, a culmination of events that were making it worse and worse.
Yeah.
Frustrations were getting high. So it was not awesome.
Now, at this point, too, this far into the day, how are you guys with food and water? Because it's obviously you've been out there way longer than you anticipated.
Water was fine, and food we had a little bit extra. We each bring more than we need for the day, just in case, and that happens to be a good situation this time.
Perfect.
Plus we were right at Panther Brook, and we had the filter, so we could fill up water right there, no problems, which was good. So interesting thing about Panther Brook is, again, this is unmarked, and so what you got to do is keep your eyes open for a series of cairns that kind of direct you down the path in the least obtrusive way. Some of it may or may not seem logical, but it's there. That's the path you take. And there is a particular set of cairns that kind of direct you to cross the brook completely and get off of that. And that's kind of a very important point of interest, because if you follow the brook path down further, it gets a bit steeper and a bit more difficult. You don't want to take that route, is really what I'm saying. So you got to keep your eyes out for the cairns that tell you to cross the brook and get back into the woods off of that actual drainage. So that was kind of where my headspace was at the time. Knowing what was ahead of us, I was really trying to focus on paying attention to those cairns as best I could, make sure that we did not go too far. Thankfully, I'll say, we did find the right cairn, and we did get off the brook path at the right place. Everybody was safe. We didn't make any wrong turns. Thumbs up. That made me feel good. From that point, we started walking, and it's really a short distance from when you get off of the brook and onto the regular trail to go down to Bradley Pond, that there's a junction. And it's not what I would say an obvious junction that you'd say, okay, well, I can go left or right, and they'll bring me to 2 different locations, whichever way I choose. But it is a junction where if you go straight, you're going to follow the trail down, and you'll end up getting to Bradley Pond, and the Bradley Pond leading to the Blue Trail back to the car. That's where we wanted to go. That's what we're trying to pay attention to. Unfortunately, it is about 1 o'clock in the morning, almost 1 o'clock in the morning at this point.
And raining still?
And it is sprinkling.
Okay.
Thankfully, it never got to the point where it was pouring. It was a fine mist, and, a little bit heavier sprinkle for a little bit, but it wasn't terrible. In fact,